Thank you for stopping by Trauma and True Crime. Well, here we go again. I know I sound like a broken record, but tell me if this sounds familiar to you. A mother goes missing under suspicious circumstances. Her husband, the last person who saw her, gives a cringe-worthy press interview. In the interview, the husband reveals that the night before she went missing, he and his wife had an argument. We soon learn that the couple is on the verge of divorce. Home security footage comes out showing that the husband backed his car into his garage in the wee hours of the morning, and that the woman never left the residence after being seen on camera going inside the night before she went missing. This woman is still missing, and to this day, not only has the husband refused to cooperate with the police to find his wife, he's not participated in any of her family's desperate searches and has refused to allow his children to see any of his wife's family. In addition, his family has refused to join any searches, saying that they believe she's just run off with another man. Sound familiar? Welcome to part 3 of my multi-part series on holy husbands with pent-up rage. Part 3 is related to a very active and very concerning case out of Southern California, Chula Vista to be precise. I've followed this case since she was reported missing, and I did a video comparing her husband's press interview with the famous Chris Watts porch interview, and I'll link that in the description below if you want to check that out. In just the last few days, some very, very disturbing information has come out via the press that opens the window into what this missing woman's life was like in the year before she went missing. And part of these revelations show that her husband very much fits the description of a holy husband with pent-up rage. Hence, I have included him in this series. Truth is, I would have done a video about this case right now, regardless of whether Larry Millete qualified as a holy husband or not, because these revelations make me beyond concerned about his children. If you watch part 2 in this series, the one about Josh Powell, you'll remember that how the story ended.
The man and 2 children. I just dropped off the children and he wouldn't let me in the door. Oh. There's 2 little boys.
Larry Millete's behavior ahead of his wife's disappearance is shockingly similar to Josh Powell's. The reason Josh killed himself and his children was because the police were closing in on him, and he knew it. Josh couldn't face the notion of being shown for the horrible person he was, so he wiped his entire family off the face of the earth and didn't even tell anyone where he could find Susan Powell's body. It still hasn't been found to this day. I can't stop thinking about this case with Maya May Millete, and I can't stop thinking about the fact that 3 children, ages 11, 9, and 5, are still in the full custody and care of the man who may have taken their mother's life. And he doesn't appear to be the kind of guy who's willing to allow the world to see him as anything but a martyr. Before I editorialize any more about this holy husband, let me give you some key facts from the case, and then I'll update you on the information that's just come out in the last few days. Thursday, January 7th is the last time anyone heard from 39-year-old Maya Millete. Her last known contact was during a 3-way Facebook call with friends at around 5:30 p.m. that night. At the time, she was deep into the planning of her daughter's 11th birthday trip to Big Bear that weekend with the rest of the family. It's said that she was very excited about making preparations for this. That's why her family started to get very concerned when they couldn't get a hold of her all day Friday, the next day. At the end of the day, Maya's brother went over to the house, and Larry told him that she had locked herself in the bedroom all day. Her brother went and knocked on the door, but he didn't get an answer, and believed Larry when he said that she was still in there just sleeping off their fight, so he went home. But it didn't keep the family from worrying about her, because they knew it wasn't like her to just lock herself in her room for hours on end without tending to her daughters and very young son, and also without returning all their messages and calls. So on Saturday morning, Maya's father went over to the house and asked if he could see Maya. Larry said that she was still locked in the bedroom, but this time he found the key, and when they opened the door, Maya was nowhere to be found. When Maya's father asked about it, Larry said, "Oh, we got into a fight. She probably needed space and went hiking or wine tasting with her friends." And this was early in the morning that he was talking about she had to have left. Wine tasting? Her father, in a pandemic, her father left, but he wasn't buying it. Maya's Lexus SUV was in the driveway, and so was her brand new Jeep, which is a toy that she bought for herself for her Jeeping hobby. So both vehicles that she would have had to leave with were still at the house. Maya's sister, Mary Chris, reported her missing on Sunday, January 10th, and since that time, she and her husband Richard have been the driving force in the faces of organized searches and prayer vigils ever since she went missing. Not long after giving an interview to the press that was widely panned for its heartlessness, Larry Millete lawyered up and would not even provide the name of his attorney to the press. And he appears to be doing everything but looking for his missing wife. And what's Larry's story? Well, Larry's story was that he and Maya had been having some marriage troubles, so they've been sleeping in separate rooms, and he has no idea where she is and didn't see her leaving the house. He says that on Thursday night they got into an argument. She locked herself in the room. He said she was still locked in her room that morning when he left with his son to go to the beach at around 6 a.m., leaving his 11 and 9-year-old girls at home with Maya for online school. Just a side note, I grew up in Southern California, and we don't go to the beach at 6 o'clock in the morning in January with our 5-year-old boys, okay? Continuing with Larry's story, he says that he returned to the home later that evening and she was still locked in her room, and that's when her brother came over to try to find her. And Larry says that he never saw her that night, but he heard her in the kitchen making herself dinner and banging around in the kitchen. And according to Larry, it was just as much of a surprise to him when her room was empty the next day, when her father demanded that Larry find the key to open the door. Until a few days ago, that's all we knew. But a few days ago, some new information came out that gives us a clue as to why Larry clammed up so fast. Here's the new information. On Monday, January 11th, just 4 days after Maya went missing, a lawyer by the name of Billy Little, that Maya's family retained, was able to gain entry into the home. Billy reports that as soon as he entered the home, he noticed that there were many fans blowing on full blast around the house, that it was cool in the house, and that there were several windows open. He said he tried to notice if there was any strong odor, but he didn't notice anything, so he couldn't figure out why there would be so many fans blowing in such mild weather. He walked around the house, and when he got to the room where Larry said Maya had been locking herself in, Billy noticed that there was a freshly repaired 6x8 hole in the door right by the doorknob. When Billy said, "Hey, Larry, this is freshly repaired. What happened here?" Larry said, "Oh, Maya did that a long time ago. She punched through the door." Billy said that inside Maya's room, he saw yet another hole that had been repaired at about shoulder level, but this was an older hole. So he asked Larry about that, and he said, "Oh yeah, that's something Maya did a long time ago." I get it. Maya's the crazy one, right? So Billy also confirmed that Larry had asked to borrow cleaning equipment that weekend. Larry also confirmed that there would probably be gun residue on his hands because he'd been shooting that weekend. He just happened to go shooting that weekend after he took his kid to the beach at 6 o'clock in the morning, okay? So Billy also noticed that a freezer that had been previously in the garage was missing. He later found that freezer at Larry's aunts and uncle's house. Billy reported all of his findings to the Chula Vista police, but then was asked by them not to investigate any further. It wasn't until the police executed a search warrant on Larry's aunt and uncle's house this weekend that Billy Little and Maya's family came out with all this additional information to the press. The evidence they released to the press in this process is quite terrorizing. In his investigation, Billy was able to obtain home security audio from a neighbor's house that clearly sounds like 6 gunshots coming from the Millete house on the night Larry said they got into an argument. The gunshots can be heard at around 10 p.m. that evening. Take a listen. He was also able to obtain video that shows Larry backing his car into the garage at around 10:30 in the morning, and his aunt's car speeding up to the house and parking in front at around the same time. Those of you who sit on Watts Island with me are familiar with the old back car in the garage in the early morning trick, right? But Larry's behavior from January 2020 to the day Maya went missing is really what's the most concerning. Shocking, right? So here are the things Billy found out about Larry's behavior, and this is where the holiness and the pent-up rage comes in. It appears that Larry became suspicious that Maya was having an affair and became obsessive about it, to the point of sending her hundreds of text messages per day. These text messages sometimes included long Bible scriptures and texts, which became more and more damning and controlling as time went on. Apparently, they did try to go to marriage counseling, but it didn't help. So then Larry became more desperate and controlling and started enlisting people outside of the marriage to try to help him. He went to Maya's boss and tried to get him to separate her from a man that he suspected Maya was having an affair with. But that wasn't enough, because then he started suspecting she was having an affair with another guy, so he asked him to separate her from that guy. Larry then went to Maya's side of the family and accused her of cheating and enlisted all of them in trying to get her to stay with him and ganging up on her. He also enlisted the help of their church pastor. As things progressed to the fall of 2020, he even got so desperate that he cast what appears to be a blood spell to bond Maya to him forever. Some Facebookers in a Maya group I joined when she went missing may have found some evidence that he commissioned this altar on Fiverr, of all places. Who knew you could do that? It has incense, 4 rocks, 4 candles, unity, home, foundation, marriage. The droppings on the photo is not blood, it's the candle wax with the red stain on the sticks. That's used for, or the red strain on the sticks, it's used for love spells or tie to people together. So it's something that he's just trying to do everything in his power, or even beyond his power, to control what she wants. Things apparently got bad enough by January 7th of this year for Maya to ask for her family to borrow money to retain a divorce lawyer, and that's just how controlling Larry is. Maya's the primary breadwinner of the household, but she didn't have access to the bank accounts. So Billy Little learned since this time that on Christmas Day, Larry told someone that he wanted to kill Maya, but he needed to plan it well. Then on January 4th, Larry asked the same person if he could find someone he could hire to kill Maya's alleged boyfriend for $20,000. Now, this is all hearsay, according to what this Billy Little has investigated on behalf of Maya's family. And just like Susan Powell, it appears that Maya saw this coming. Billy Little reports that she told a family member that if something happens to her, it was her husband. Now, I want to emphasize that Larry has not been named a suspect or a person of interest in this case. He's not been arrested, and he's presumed innocent until proven guilty. In fact, Larry had a response to Billy Little's press statements. Let's take a look and read this together, because I think his statement is pretty interesting. Quote, "He lied and presented himself as NCIS to gain access to my home. He misrepresented himself to gain access to my family's home as well, claiming to be NCIS. He lies and misrepresents himself. posing to be law enforcement. More lies, implications, and speculations. I do not hate anyone, and just hope people can stop spreading lies and making our lives into entertainment in the media. We are already going through difficult times. Also, I am not quite sure if impersonating NCIS is a crime, but it should be. Lies. Maybe because CVPD will not work with him. Who knows his logic? People have their own agenda and reasons why they do things. He's been untruthful from the start and seems to be willing to do anything, including manipulating the situation. My wife is a good woman and she's missing. Everything else is just noise. Ladies and gentlemen, Maya May Millete. As I said, this is part 3 of a multi-part series on what I call Holy Husbands with Pent-Up Rage. There are a few reasons I created this series. First, I want to encourage people not to follow false prophets. Now, I'm not saying Larry is one. He's just using God to try to get his way in this situation. But anyway, about false prophets. This is something I had to learn the hard way. There are many, many vulnerable people out there who search for answers in their darkest moments. And in these times, nearly anyone who shows them kindness or compassion will win their trust. But not all those people are worthy of your trust. In many cases, people look for those answers in religion or spirituality or some sort of new age guru. And take it from me, in your most vulnerable moments, your judgment about whether that guru standing in front of you has your best interest at heart is probably warped and could lead you down a path to the place where many of these women have found themselves. Of course, there's nothing wrong with looking for outside help or spiritual guidance, but don't allow the other people to control your life. Anyone who tries to control your life, or your thoughts, your money, or your independence is not setting you up for success and doesn't have your best interests at heart. Secondly, I hope by now that with part 3, I've been able to show that people who hurt other people are not just popped out ready to kill. Have you heard the expression, hurt people, hurt people? We do know there are exceptions to that, but I truly believe, and it seems that the science is starting to prove more and more and more and more, that a person can be born with killer DNA, but if they were raised by a family who is evolved enough to raise healthy, well-adjusted grown-ups that know how to express and process anger and pain in a healthy way without taking it out on other people, that person is much less likely to go out and kill someone, even if they were born with that killer DNA. By the same token, let's say a person was born with no killer DNA, but was raised by a long line of toxic, angry abusers who didn't teach them how to understand human relationships or how to deal with their anger in a healthy way. And now let's say that this person believes that their God told them that it's okay to kill certain people who have committed evil deeds. Now let's say this person is married to a woman for 21 years. And he gets it into his head that she's having an affair and that she's therefore evil. I mean, just think about the time in your life you felt the most rage. What was it that was stopping you from carrying out the bad behavior that you wanted to carry out in that moment? I mean, even on YouTube here, you hear people not being able to control their anger and, they get Tourette's of the mouth and they're blah, blah, blah. You have to have some sort of emotional breaks. Some people don't have them. You had brakes on you that were built in and or taught, but other people don't, and they don't know what to do with it. So my issue with the holy husbands of Pent-Up Rage is that their holiness is the thing that tells them that they can keep going. In fact, their holiness and the way they weaponize their God has contributed to the belief that they get to take another person's life. Somehow, even though it says right there in the 10 Commandments that thou shalt not kill, they get to talk themselves into it anyway. These people even believe they are above God. What is the solution? There's nothing wrong with believing in God or some sort of church that helps you understand his meaning or origins, but I suggest that you do not allow that to replace your own moral values and standing with yourself. Because at the end of the day, You're the only person who gets to live in your skin. You're the only person who gets to go to sleep in your own soul at the end of the day. And when you die, you're the only person God will be looking at when you account for what you did with your life. Another reason I created this series is to show that there's a pattern among toxic families. And some families are more toxic than others. And the toxicity can grow and escalate over time to the point where someone decides to commit murder. And it didn't involve just one person. This doesn't happen all the time, but it certainly has with the cases I featured in this series. In every single one of them, starting with Vallow Dayball, then Powell, and now Millete. And do I need to even mention Planet Watts? The accuser's toxic family members come out and say a bunch of horrible, abusive stuff about the victim and their family. They don't come right out and say it, but what they want you to believe is that the victim deserved to die. I would certainly hope that you've learned by now that this is not only sadistic, it's pathetic, and it shows the quality of their character. And it makes the rational thinker say, no wonder she ended up murdered. That family hates her. Or him, in some cases. I'm absolutely petrified for the Millete kids. There are 3 of them. 2 girls are 11 and 9 and a 5-year-old boy. Larry has not allowed these children to see Maya's family since she went missing. Please watch this clip of Larry's father with 2 of his children.
The family of Maya is looking for a dead body. We're still waiting.
Did anybody hear any gunshots on that night?
No gunshot, nothing at all.
Considering what we know about Larry and about past holy husbands of Pent-Up rage, I strongly urge law enforcement to keep the children away from Larry and move quickly on filing those charges. We can only hope that this search warrant yielded some evidence that will lead to an arrest. I know they were probably looking at least for the freezer there. At the very least, I hope to God Larry is a more rational and less selfish person than Josh Powell. If anyone from the Millete case is watching, please know that my heart is with you, and please, please, please keep those children safe. If you recognize any of these patterns in your own life, please call the domestic violence hotline in your area. It's not okay to be manipulated and controlled by your family members, and there are many forms of manipulation and control: spiritual control, emotional control, physical control, financial control. It's not normal to want to control the actions, thoughts, and behaviors of another person, including your own spouse. Finally, if you know anything about Maya's disappearance, please call the Chula Vista Police Department at 619-691-5139 or Crime Stoppers at 888-580-8477. Tipsters can remain anonymous. Thank you for watching.